Hello there. Welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 2, Episode 1, The Ironwood School of Success. Directed by Lou Antonio and written by Cannell and Huggins. The episode begins at Jim's trailer, which has also had some light remodelling work done on it. Jim gets a phone call from Rocky telling him to hurry up and neatly re-establishes their relationship for anyone who might have forgotten between seasons. It isn't too long before Rockford is accosted by some armed goons, but neatly makes his escape in a Volkswagen Beetle. Garner is walking/running with a pronounced limp due to a knee operation he had before filming, and it's quickly explained in the episode a few times.
What are you limping for?
I went fishing, fell off the end of the pier.
What are you limping for, Jim?
I fell off my skateboard.
Why are you limping?
Oh, I went dancing the other night. I got a little carried away, started to dip, and I slipped.
It's also not long before we get reintroduced to Dennis Becker, who we find is on the verge of becoming a lieutenant.
I took the lieutenant's exam. I'm 5th on the list.
We also get more of a reminder of Rocky and Jim's relationship as Rocky tries to convince Jim to give up the PI business as they head to the airport to pick up Jim's old friend, the Aaron Ironwood of the title.
Hello, Aaron. Give me a hug. I don't know hello.
A man who has really made something of himself, running several companies with a personal wealth of $200 million, the equivalent of $1.5 billion today. He arrives in his private jet, and despite Rocky's attempts to inflate Jim's own success, Jim's having none of it.
Got the plans all drawn up for a beach house. We're going to start construction in a couple of weeks.
I live here permanently, and I like it fine.
It's a real insight into the almost zen-like approach Rockford has to life, not giving a damn what other people think of him as long as he's content with himself. How true this is when he lives case to case and can barely make rent, it's hard to say. But it reminds me of a similar LA resident that would hit the big screen many years later, Jeffrey the Dude Lebowski. In fact, it really wouldn't be too much of a stretch to see The Big Lebowski as an alternate reality Rockford Files episode. The dude is brought into a situation by accident, investigates a case while not wanting to, has a dubious relationship with law enforcement, but manages to solve the whole thing by the end, despite not appearing very capable. Aaron Ironwood is either charmed by Rockford's circumstances or is being polite. And when we see him give one of his motivational talks, it's likely that being polite is all part of his act.
See, I don't look like no Superman. I ain't got no more than 8th grade education.
Ironwood is played by James Hampton, who I know best as the dad from Teen Wolf, but whose filmography is as long as your arm and is likely known to American viewers of a certain age as Trooper Hannibal Dobbs in F Troop.
Dad, blow assembly.
Ironwood is your classic flim-flam man, selling the secrets of making millions for the low price of $5,000. And I would be fascinated to know when exactly these type of schemes started, as they're still going on in one form or another to this day. If they were still fairly new when this episode aired, then it's possible viewers wouldn't have been able to identify Ironwood as a snake oil salesman, but to modern eyes, it's immediately obvious he is a con artist.
There's not too much about it that doesn't sound like a medicine show sales pitch.
While Jim knows a con when he smells one, he also has a soft spot for old friends, and allows himself to be taken in by Ironwood's sob story of being blackmailed by thugs who want his company for 1/10 of its price. His plan is to give Jim his entire fortune to escape the blackmailers. Jim agrees and has Beth look over the contract, which she believes is all above board.
Thanks, Beth.
I'll send you a bill. Now that you're worth $200 million, maybe you'll pay it before Christmas.
He then tells Ironwood that if there's anything off about this deal, he will sell to the thugs for the $20 million they want to pay. They both meet with the thugs to try and get out from under the blackmail, and Jim just happens to have served time with one of them. Knowing that these guys aren't just thugs, but Italian organised thugs, Jim immediately agrees to sell to them, fully aware of the consequences of not doing so.
Mr. Ironwood said you wouldn't sell.
Well, Mr. Ironwood is inside, and I say the company is on the block. Do you want it or not?
Which gets him into trouble with Ironwood, but Jim isn't afraid of him. He is afraid of the mafia, though.
You give me the company and then throw me at the mafia. You must have known I was going to sell it. Only a dummy wouldn't sell to them.
I didn't figure you'd turn chicken.
Why not? You did.
Jim then speaks to Rocky about how Ironwood was conning him, but he doesn't know how or why. Jim and Ironwood eventually come to blows over the situation, and it turns into a schoolyard brawl, which seems to be the intention of the choreography for this fight, to further show the nature of their fractious relationship. Eventually, Jim gets tired of this awkward reminiscing and gives Ironwood his check, but when he gets home, he gets picked up by Agent Patrick of the FBI.
We're used to dealing with barf bags like you.
Cop, huh?
Federal, out.
Played by a returning Ken Swofford. He explains to Rockford that Ironwood is running a pyramid scheme, whose company isn't worth anything, and who they were about to arrest and freeze the assets of. Which means Jim sold a worthless company to the mob for $20 million and just gave the money away. This is yet another novel story from the Rockford writers. It's also the first time they've openly said the Italian-American villains are mafia. It's surprisingly disconcerting to see Rockford be on the back foot just as much as he is here, reluctant to act as he normally would because of his history with Ironwood, and yet it's still completely within character. Although clearly unintentional, Rockford's limp is a sort of metaphor for his mental state during the episode. He isn't completely debilitated, but he is slowed down, his judgment clouded by friendship as his movement is affected by his injury. It isn't long before the mob pick Rockford up, having already nabbed Ironwood, and unable to get their money back with Ironwood's assets frozen, they decide instead to put the pair of friends on ice. Fortunately, it isn't long before Jim can engineer their escape, and thankfully the cops show up just in time, arresting Ironwood in the process. It isn't too long, however, before Ironwood is hatching a new scheme from behind bars.
I could organize the prisoners, get them to think positively about this prison reform, get the old philosophy cooking.
This is a cracking start to the new season, once again giving us a different type of story, but with plenty of familiar elements. The con is a fairly straightforward one to follow, and it's fascinating watching Jim get wrapped up in it. Hampton does a great job of playing the con man and friend, always coming off a little slimy and a little endearing at the same time, and it's really his and Jim's relationship that carries the plot along. It would have been nice to see him introduced a little earlier and see their relationship more before things go south, as we've spent a year getting to know Jim, and it's difficult to warm to Ironwood when he's revealed to be up to something pretty early on. Maybe this is due to the greater awareness of dodgy motivational speakers and pyramid schemes now than it was in 1975, but I do think it would have benefited from a little more time of Jim and Ironwood enjoying each other's company with no agenda.
Aaron, you remember when we were in school, that kid that you wrecked his car?
Yeah, I remember.
There are some great comedy scenes in the episode too, like Jim's cab ride.
Hey, mister, we're being tailed.
Sure hope so.
$10, I'll lose him for you.
I'm the one that's supposed to suggest that.
and watching him and Ironwood annoy the hell out of the mobsters.
All these guys have a tendency to take themselves too seriously.
Yeah, I can see that.
Which makes it all the more disappointing that we didn't get more of them working together rather than against each other. It's a gentle enough reintroduction to the show that brings something new, but it didn't blow me away. So for me, this one is a 4 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.